It's raining out, I suppose.
Yeah, the traffic's a nightmare.
Oh, it's amazing.
Well, apparently at the Alpine they've got four-way traffic lights.
Yes, it's
They haven't been
unbelievable.
out at all.
Well, let's start off by welcoming everybody to While the Chicken Soup is Cooking. I don't know how last week's went while the turkey was cooking, but did you all enjoy your Thanksgiving turkeys at least?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we presume Rabbi often enjoyed his.
I would guess that as well. Anticipate as much.
Yeah.
We don't really have. We just have to thank every day, don't we? That's what we Brits do. We we don't need one day a year. We just do it every day.
You have to remember, in America, it is the most important holiday.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it, in some respects, is for them, it's not a religious holiday.
Mm-hmm.
It's just family and friends. And although we have lots of, sorry,
We discussed this last
I know we discussed it. Doesn't mean we can't do it again. But it is. What I was trying to say before I was so rudely interrupted is that it's bigger than Christmas, and how important it is for Americans to have Thanksgiving. It really is really important for them.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Apparently, the shul that our friends belong to in New Jersey, which is an Orthodox shul as such, they provided, I think, about 800 meals to people all around because of this.
That's
Amazing.
I think they charge $5, and what they offered for $5, well, absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Wow. Goodness.
So I've got a question for all of you guys tonight. Let's see how we grapple with this one. I'm interested to see what emerges from this, because we're going to be reading Parshat Vayishlach. Look at that. We're throwing in the Torah at the beginning. So the 30-second Torah segment here. Parshat Vayishlach, in which we read about Jacob on his way to encounter Esau for the first time in 20 years. And we read about the episode where he sends his family on ahead. It's the nighttime. He's going back to fetch some small pots and things that he's left behind. And we read about his wrestling and his grappling with the angel throughout the night. And in the morning, he refuses to let the angel leave without giving him a blessing. And that's the point at which he is given the name and the title Yisrael. We become B'nai Yisrael on account of that struggle. And so the question that occurred to me is like this. I'm interested to hear from people what you guys think the biggest struggle in 2020, yeah, I was about to say 2021 there for a second. I guess I'm getting a bit ahead of myself and looking forward too much to getting rid of this year. But the biggest struggle for Judaism, for Jewry, Anglo Jewry, worldwide Jewry, just interested to hear from people what they think the biggest issue is that we face. I guess it also was captivating last night hearing Aaron Lansky talking about the preservation of a culture, the preservation of literature, and all that kind of thing. I'm just interested to just throw it out there and see what catches and see what happens, what people think the biggest issues that we as Jews in 2020 are grappling with.
That's anti-Semitism.
Okay.
What I would say.
And
Antisemitism.
So anti-Semitism is the biggest issue that we are grappling with. So it's a pressure from without rather than a pressure from within. And aside from a physical threat, what kind of threat do you think it does to us internally?
Security.
Mm-hmm. Is anyone going to weigh in either direction?
It is a problem.
Knew I could count on you, Lawrence.
Yeah, me. As if I got the opinion. Anti-Semitism brings us together. it's one of those things where if there's an external threat, we come together. What divides us is, funnily enough, is things like assimilation, where we are allowed our religion in freedom to practice it. It allows people to drift away, and that is more of a danger than anything else. And I think we have to make our Judaism relevant to the youngsters, because they are the future.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't have a reason for following their Judaism, then there'll be a generation gone, and we will be in trouble, because we're only one generation from extinction at the end of the day. So therefore, I feel that assimilation is the greater danger.
That's also that. So that is more a threat from within rather than a threat from without, isn't it?
No, it's an outside threat, in as much as when our youngsters go off to places like university and they mix out of the community and they find there's a different world out there which they really enjoy being with, and then they find somebody who isn't Jewish, then, you know, it gets diluted. I don't mean to be racist about it in that way. I mean, but if you want the religion to
So the millions watching on YouTube. No, do continue.
I can take it, but you know what I mean. That we have to be strong enough to be able to infuse the youngsters to continue, and that's the most important thing. And I don't like, to be honest, I don't like leaving it to the Haredi community.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by leaving it to the Haredi community?
Everybody looks at the Haredi community as being those who are fulfilling Judaism as it should be practiced. And I find it, I think they're too insular, they're too confined. They're right tight like that. I think us ordinary United Synagogue Jews need to practice what we believe in and be strong enough for the future and with our generation, our younger generation.
So does anyone want to come in with either a different answer, or agreeing with Marion, or agreeing with Lawrence, or challenging either of them? We've had anti-Semitism. I'm going to get to Lee, but just to catch Lee up quickly. Good evening, Lee, and good evening, Elaine. We were asking what we think the biggest challenge. Oh, and Miriam as well. Hello. The biggest challenge and the biggest threat and the biggest struggle for Jews in 2020, because I was mentioning about Jacob wrestling with the angel all night. And so we've had an answer of anti-Semitism, and we've had an answer from Lawrence, which was assimilation. So Lee, over to you.
Okay, first of all, can I just say to Mary and Henry that I was tidying up Josh's room, and in the corner I found the siddur you gave him when he was born. It's like, I'm actually using it to practice my Hallel, because eyesight's not as good, and it's slightly bigger print, but absolutely lovely message in it, and we're using it, and he's used it until.
How lovely! We're very, very happy.
So talking.
Long may it continue.
Absolutely. Thinking about inspiration of young people, I'm sure, because it's not beautifully new, and it has been thumbed through over the years. So that's an inspiration to one of my children that I will be forever thankful for. So I have two different kids. Josh chose to leave the bubble. Totally went to Hull University, a course where there's only one other Jew. Had lived with people, with a whole variety of people. Has really experienced university life. And then ended up coming back, doing a year at Westminster, and being sent to the heart of Scotland, where the MP he was then working for realised that Josh had slightly different dietary needs to other people that he'd met with, and found, weirdly enough, Sally Stewart, Rory Stewart's mum, for Josh to live with, who basically his dad had been Jewish, who would know, and who looked after him very well. So I've got him, who's gone the way that hasn't been. And yes, he was chairman of a JSOC that wasn't very big, and non-Jewish people joined the JSOC to ensure it was quorate. So you've got those sort of, and Chabad were pretty good, but he didn't make use of anything. He's always been very secure in his own Judaism, I think. So that's an interesting one. Samantha has stayed in the Jewish bubble. I don't think, other than on her course, she's met anyone that isn't Jewish.
Is she not in JFS?
She's in uni now.
Oh, of course she's.
Yeah, don't worry, she's older than that. Yeah, she's growing up.
That's
She's
crazy.
living. She chose a kosher flat. They have kosher flats in normal halls of residence now, rather than Hillel. And you write it down. She chose it because it's I suppose a really PC way of saying you want to live with other Jews.
Mhm.
So, it's none of, like, the girls range from totally what I'd say hechshed kosher to veggie kosher, but they're all very respectful of each other. But Haredi have been amazing. When Samantha had to self-isolate, she was tested positive for COVID, and so was one of her friends. Food parcels came, the Rebbits and cooks for the kids all the time. And I spoke to the Haredi rabbi because I phoned up to say thank you so much for looking after my daughter and her friends. And he said that she's cooking more, because when she used to cook Friday night dinners, to go to a Friday night dinner, you had to sit through a Friday night dinner, and if that's not your thing, you don't go. Whereas now people pick up, I said this to Shira the other day on my driveway, people will pick up their Haredi parcel on the Thursday night, and Samantha says some of them just eat it there and then, because it's still warm. But others will have a Friday night dinner. So Haredi and
Haredi or Chabad?
Chabad.
yeah, Aish has been amazing as well. Tribe have been amazing. In fact, all of the different organisations have been fantastic and inspirational and great. And I think our young people choose their own way. I think that we have done as much as we possibly can. As I said, two very different children. They were both Rosh B'nai Akiva, but that's squishy for you. But other than that, they've both gone their own ways. They've both chosen themselves, and I just have to think, have I done enough? So I don't think once they're at university, I think it's often a little. It's a little too late, unless Aish or someone notices someone who's vulnerable. I have a very funny story. I will not mention the name, but an old trainee of mine was a young man from irreligious background, and he was Aish. I think he's an Aish rabbi now in America, but that's nothing. And we had our prevent training. I don't know if any of you know what prevent training is, but it's that training that is supposed to stop radicalization. And every teacher has to be trained to spot it. And we're listening, we're at this, the police officer's talking, and yeah, so Josh has just noticed the cake that I just made. And
Send it over.
it's nice. Yeah. And basically he wrote a post-it note, like, when you pass notes in the middle of a class because you're being naughty. And he said, that's what happened to me. He was a vulnerable kid and was aged, but it's the better way of going. But I don't know, I think once they're at university, our kids sort of know where they are and where they're set. And
We
who
see,
they want.
yeah, Nick and I also have seen the same thing when we were working in Manchester, because we were working predominantly with kids in year 7 to year 13. We would see that the teenagers, especially the year 10s to 13s, if they were very heavily involved in our programming, they would tend to go to university and fall in line with JSOC and with Tribe and with chaplaincy and all of that, which was incredible. And then the people that were very disinterested went to university and kind of did their own thing. They weren't interested at all. And I kind of agree with you in the sense that once they go to university, there's nobody encouraging them to go and choose a specific path. It's their decision to make at the end of the day. It's their home that they're running, or flat that they're running, and their kitchen that they're running. So if they want to go and bring in non-kosher food, that is their prerogative, and then that's their choice as well. And they just get to a certain age where it's like, there you go, I've taught you everything I can teach you. Now it's your chance to go and and flourish in whichever direction you want to go into, which is, yeah, do you agree?
Absolutely. There was actually something that you said before, Lee, about Josh, when you were saying how, I can't remember the exact words that you used, but you talked about how he had something inside him that I mean, I guess you could call it his identity, but that was something that was strong within to carry him through. And I wonder if that's really the key, isn't it? Is having the maturity to see within you what it is that you value, and to hold on to that, even when you're put into as you described it, an environment in Hull where there's like very little available Jewishly. But then something that Lawrence was also saying before, which was I can't remember how to word it, but I had a question for you as well, Lawrence.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you what it was. So the question that I wanted to come back to Lawrence on was that you were saying that that we have to figure out how to inspire the next generation and make Judaism relatable. And I was actually going to come back to you and ask, who does that fall to ultimately? Because I've had similar conversations, people have said similar things to me, but they pretty much expect it to come from the rabbis and from teachers and from role models. And when I've posited that perhaps the parents, the grandparents also need to have a level of self-inspiration and passion that they can pass on, they kind of just, you know, put their blocks put their blocks up a little bit. So I'm interested to know what you think about that.
I've always said you can only show them the way.
Right.
So you show them as much as you can, and the children will take their own path. But there is a generation, slightly, my generation, maybe one a bit below, who've don't know how to show their children. They don't, they're Jewish, they like being Jewish, but to light candles on Shabbat no, they won't do that. So they're culturally Jewish, but not religiously Jewish. And that, I think, allows the next generation to drift away. But yes, they can pick it up from being aged or from Jewish societies. In my day, Stone and I, and probably a lot of you remember going to Jewish youth clubs. Stone and I were leaders at Maccabi in Compound Gardens for many years. And so the kids met Jews and were with Jews, and although it wasn't a religious youth club, it brought the Jews together. And we don't have that today. It's true there's B'nai Akiva, but you don't have the Maccabi or the HAY that used to be around. They've gone. And that is a sad point so the youngsters have difficulty meeting their peers other than in school. There weren't the Jewish schools in those days. There was it's JFS, there was Hasdanim, but there wasn't Yavne and there wasn't Emmanuel. So they weren't around. So that has made a difference. I think the Jewish schools have made a difference. But if they don't get it at home, then there's very little hope, really. It's the home that instills what the religion is about at the end of the day, in my opinion. Humble opinion, no less.
The most humble.
I've much to be humble about.
We have seen a number of families. We've seen a number of families who don't relate to their children. There's no problem there. And for some unknown reason, the children have just drifted away. I think one of the problems is you mustn't. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. One of the problems is we mustn't involve them in coercion. When you start forcing children to do something, they will for sure do the opposite. And somehow or another, you've got to convince them it's their idea to actually be Jewish, to have Yiddishkeit. Means, whatever family, it's important that the children and may feel that they are doing it, rather than you are conversing them.
Oh, is that our internet?
Because they'll turn against it.
Thank you. Absolutely. I've observed that myself. That when we were, as Shira was saying, when we worked with teenagers, when they felt forced to do things by their parents, it's
even our children now, like not even to do with religion, with our own kids, if we try and positive parent most of the time, so it's not saying no to everything, it's saying yes to as much as we can say yes to, and always like focusing on the positivity that they're doing and all of the amazing work that they're doing rather than the downfalls. They've responded so much better to that than they would do if we just spent 90% of the time telling them, no, you need to go and correct this, or you're not doing this right. And I think that's the way in every aspect of raising children now, and showing children the way, in a sense, right?
Mm.
Didn't it come out in Fiddler on the Roof that the girl eventually went off with the Russian? I think it was just the problem. She was.
Henry, I've missed a bit of what you said. I don't know if it's because you're a bit too far away from the microphone, or if because my internet is cutting out, but
I'm sorry. Right?
it's my internet.
Did you see it, or were you not allowed to see it?
I remember seeing bits of it, but I don't remember ever seeing the whole thing through, to be honest. I'm familiar with many of the songs, but I'm familiar enough with the storyline to know that she ends up intermarrying.
She has to leave and she goes with the Russian.
That's right, yeah. So I missed the end of what you were saying.
Well, I think that was what it was basically, that by being forced to live in the Steppel manner, it was her way of rebelling.
Right. It was too much pressure.
I'll say one thing. We have a great nephew who's at Manchester at the moment. He keeps everything, but he's living in an apartment with 6 or 7 non-Jewish boys, very considerate, and everything is separate. When it came to Yom Kippur, they had never met a Jew before, and they all fasted with him. And at the end of it, he made a meal to break the fast, but they all fasted with him.
Oh, incredible.
And I think that was an amazing thing of an introduction. That
they're all overweight, but that's beside the point.
That's very special.
I think so.
Amazing.
I mean, to be able to lead in that way, and to be a positive influence through our actions, that must make you incredibly proud.
They've never known a Jew. They came from all over the country, and wherever they came from, they'd never met a Jew before. The consideration, respect they showed too, it's quite amazing.
It's incredible.
It's amazing.
So who's chiming in next? Let's not go silent just yet.
I've always interpreted that Fiddler on the Roof thing. Everyone's got their own views depending on when they saw it and what time of their lives it was. And I was possibly a similar age to those girls that didn't want to match at the time, and that song. And I always just thought that the dad had brought them up all the same. He brought all of those children up the same, and
they all turned out differently.
And one night out. That's why I said that I've done as much as possible to send my children out into the world. I don't think I can do much else, and I'll be supportive of their choices when they're older. I think they're grown up. They're 18. My mum was married at 18. She had 2 kids by 21. They're growing up. They're not then they're not babies anymore. So I think it's up to us when they're younger to sort of instill them with that love of being Jewish, doing what they need to do, and that they like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as they get older, one can only hope that when they see the passion, even after they left, you know, I know of some people who, after the children moved out, the parents actually just kind of relaxed their own standards a little bit, and it was almost like they were putting on the show for the kids, and then actually they weren't necessarily completely invested in it. But then when you've got people for whom it is actually tangible and it is actually real and it is something they're actually passionate about, then the passion can still continue after they grow up, and the impression that you try to leave them with when they're young, that will still continue even after they leave. And when they see what's dear and what's important and what we are passionate about, I think it leaves an impact after they leave. So I think it's something that endures beyond just kind of like, okay, they're 18 now, we let them flee. I think the way that we engage after that, I think it still leaves an impact. Is there anyone who disagrees with me on that?
No.
Identify
It starts
yourselves.
from a young age when they get used to going to shul, but it's what is available at shul, which is for their age group, is what is instrumental in forming the path that they're going to follow.
That's certainly a big part of it. It really is.
That's
It
really
is.
difficult now, though, especially because shuls are closed. Then we feel that even though my kids are not going back to shul yet, I need to still give them a positive Jewish experience at home on a Shabbat morning, even if they're not in shul with their friends.
They are very fortunate to have a mother who is capable and able to impart her knowledge in such a way.
We're trying to share resources specifically with young families to be able to do that. It's very tough. It is really, really hard, but hopefully shul's opening soon. So, well, shul's opening now, so everyone could go back if they'd like. It's just very different.
There's
I
also
don't think Jewish mothers ever let go.
No, of course not.
No. I mean, a Rottweiler eventually will let go. Jewish mother, no.
Yeah, there's a very interesting phenomena as well, which I've experienced, which is that, you know, people who I was at JFS with, I recall them being vehemently and vociferously against Judaism, against Jewish practice, against Jewish education. They were ambivalent, they were apathetic, and cared nothing for it. And now I've encountered a number of them by being back down in London, and they're scattered all around, but they're all, you know, married and have kids. And because they have kids, all of a sudden there's this shift and there's a transition there, that now it's important to instill Jewish values, Jewish education, send them to Jewish schools, whatever it is. So it's interesting because even when a person can reach the age of 18, let's say, and they care nothing for it, at some point down the line, there comes a point where it starts to go the other way for them.
Mm-hmm.
I actually remember hearing a fascinating story. I don't want to take up too much time because we're finishing up in a minute, but an amazing story about someone that I was in school with who was dead set against marrying a Jewish girl. And he met a girl, and they started dating, and a few dates in, he decided to confess and own up to the fact that he was Jewish. And she turned around to him and said, "Oh, yeah, so am I." And they were both insistent. They were they were going to marry non-Jewish people. And they had this, apparently they had this moment where they turned to each other and said, "So do you think we should break up?" And they decided against breaking up, and now they're married and now they have children. But it's just interesting that, like, they could have been so dead against it, and yet there was something there that still kind of pulled them back. Very interesting that.
Can I just say something?
Please, hello.
Have you noticed over the last few years how many more young families are coming to shul?
Yes.
Yes, it's noticeable. I've been around a long time.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that since Rabbi Feldman came in UK, a lot more young families bringing the children to shul, which didn't happen before.
And the point system.
That's what I was going to say.
No, not just for the point. The point system may come.
Maybe it's the kiddish, Elaine?
And then they go. Sorry?
Kiddish.
Maybe it's the kiddish.
I think number one, it's because we've got really good young gonim. But I also think when I used to take my children when I took my children first of all, you weren't quite sure how many children of their age were going to be. You now know that there's going to be at least 7, 8 other little children there under the age of 12 because they come with the rabbonim as well. So there's not going to be that total worry, is my child ever going to be the only child of their age, which I think is huge. But also the other beauty of, there were always kids at shul, but they used to go to children's service and maybe leave at children's service. What's beautiful about now is that they come into Kiddush and they don't just leave at children's service. Because the children's services from when I used to do them were always full. But what's nice is the families stay and they go to lunch somewhere, and they, the amount of times that I'd invite someone to lunch from the children's service, they had something going on that afternoon. And that's not, so they didn't, I'd always go, oh, do you want to come back to lunch? And they could, we're going whatever. But now that isn't happening as much anymore, which is good, I think. I think that's a big difference.
Oh, thank you. Long may it continue. And through whatever struggles and through whatever strains, please God, we come out the other side more empowered and more proud, more passionate, and ultimately enjoying what we're doing as well. So let's hope. The end of the episode with Jacob and the angel is that he will not let go until he gets a bracha, until he gets a blessing. So please God, we should always continue to resiliently hold on to what we hold dear until we get a blessing at the end of it, until we really see how it enhances our lives and how it's really a beautiful thing to be able to have. So that's all for this week. We'll see you next time.
You can't go until you're blessed.
Can't go until I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, number one. A Shabbat filled with health and happiness and abundant bounty, spiritually and physically and emotionally.
And lots of nachas from the future generation.
And lots of nachas from future generations. L'chaim. L'chaim. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.